Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Chiara Marapodi. I'm the director for the Center for Lifelong Learning at the California Institute for Human Science. And I'm joined today by Dr. Rick Gold. And many of you have already become familiar with this topic in part one. And today we're going to be talking about part two, traditional East Asian medical approaches to mental health. And I know that Dr. Gold will be touching on many things that he alluded to in part one as a continuation. And I'd like to give the floor to you, Dr. Gold. Please take us through part two and finalizing this traditional East Asian medical approaches to mental health.
Thank you so much, Chiara. My thing's not advancing here. There we go. Welcome, everybody. Those of you that were with us last week, I want to welcome you back. And if you're new, I'm going to cover a few initial topics to set the context for understanding, greater understanding of East Asian medicine. Before that, I want to thank Chiara and CIHS so much for hosting us. It's a real honor and pleasure to be associated with such a progressive and visionary institution. So, in order to understand East Asian medicine from within the context of it, we have to get out of our own paradigm, which is our own way of how we organize the world, the way we've been enculturated, the way our perceptions have been shaped by language, the many things that go into what we become, but they also are very much limiting factors. So a point of entry is to understand East Asian medicine is an energetic form of medicine. And to understand this even better, I think, is to use Einstein's theory of relativity that energy potential is equivalent to mass times the speed of sound squared. Now, why is this relevant? Because everything that we understand as being real from a Western point of view, which is from the mass, something we can measure, it's materialistic, is simultaneously imbued with tremendous energy potential. Now, this is considered to be true throughout not just Earth, but the universe itself. And so if this is so, then we human beings also have energy potential. And for whatever historic cultural reasons in East Asia, this is what was focused on more than the material. It's not to say they didn't understand that, there's materialism, but simultaneously it's energetic. And this is what the medicine is based upon. Now, we say about Western medicine, when we approach it, that it's a reductionist way of looking at the human being. We look at the parts rather than the whole. Now, I use the word materialistic here in no pejorative way. It's just what it is, that we measure mass, we measure function, we're focused on the structure of the body, the organs of the body, all very, very valid. We also develop our understanding, we forward our understanding through analytical approaches to science. And in Western medicine, this is most exemplified by the placebo-controlled, double-blinded study. And this approach to understanding in medicine and healing has created tremendous benefits for humanity. There's no doubt about it. And the one point I really want to emphasize is you don't have to be one or the other. We can embrace the whole. Okay. Now, East Asian medicine, in a different manner, we consider synthetic or holistic, that we can only understand the parts by understanding the whole, the dynamic interactions of all of the functions and the beingness of what a person is. East Asian medicine historically has been empirically based, meaning from trial and error and observation. This is a valid way of understanding, and what we see happening now in the contemporary world is that these empirically based approaches are being studied analytically, and in many, many instances, East Asian medicine is holding up to the analytical scientific approach for gaining knowledge. So we have two systems that come at the same being, the human being, from different points of view. Both are valid, both are reliable, both are based on different substance or substructure, let's say. So we can say that East Asian medicine is based on a different rationale and a different logic, but it is rational and it is logic. And when we approach this from a Western point of view, we want to be as much as we can aware of our preconceived notions and to be aware that this enculturation is pervasive, and it really focuses and modifies our what we consider real and not real. Okay, so we want to understand this within its own value system and its own cultural practices. Okay, and we want to see when we then view these notions as real and true, we don't want to understand that they're not the only real and true perspectives. Okay, these are the places we want to embark from as we look at this historically important system of medicine and contemporarily important system of medicine. Now, historically, we come from the place of the human being, and we're going to see two divergent paths, both of which are valid, both of which are rational. Western medicine, as we know it, has mostly focused on the causes of disease. We call these the pathogenic factors. East Asian medicine has focused on the anti-pathogenic factors, how we stay healthy, preventative healing, preventative medicine. Again, these are both valid, but they lead down different paths. East Asian medicine, from a clinical point of view, is based on a system of correspondences and pattern recognitions. And I'll go into this a little more thoroughly now. With one short detour. So East Asian medicine and acupuncture in the United States mostly is considered dated from the original time when Chinese workers were brought here to build the railroads. Whenever you had a group of Chinese people, someone knew traditional herbs, they knew the traditional benefits of foods, they knew simple acupressure, they knew probably some Qigong and Tai Chi. These are all woven deeply into the culture. And so whenever you had groups of people, these things would have been imported to the United States at that time. But it was really contained within the Chinese communities. It didn't reach out across the bamboo fence into the contemporary culture, the dominant culture of the time of America. It really wasn't until the early 1970s when, of all people, Richard Nixon opened cultural and political and economic relations with China that we began to hear about acupuncture at all in the press. At that time, James Scotty Reston of the New York Times, on an early trip to China with Henry Kissinger, developed an acute appendicitis and had an appendectomy, received post-operative acupuncture, and wrote about it extensively in the New York Times. And this is when it started to gain some cultural currency in America. And from the earliest times, acupuncture, when it began to even leak into the awareness and be looked at from a medical point of view, it was the treatment of pain that got the headlines. Looking forward in time, and right now where we sit in the times of the pandemic now, I really believe that the efficacy for boosting the immunity of the body, keeping us healthy, and stress management and creating deep calm are going to make significant contributions in the culture with this medicine. So the system of correspondence, we have the emphasis is on the functional relationships within the body. So the organs that we know, the heart, the liver, the spleen, the kidneys, they are of interest, but not for their anatomical structural relationships themselves, but for their functional patterns and their interrelationships with other organ systems in the body. And organs in the Chinese medical model are considered or organized around function more than structure. So it's the dynamic, physiologic, energetic functions of the organs that we emphasize. And diseases are not perceived as discrete entities from outside the body that arise from diseased organs that affect internal organs, but as imbalances in the functional relationships within the system. So with this in mind, where a disease might be manifesting, where the pain site might be, that might be the result rather than the actual cause. And by going through diagnostic procedures and within the system of correspondences, we begin to pinpoint deeper levels of dysfunction, and that's how we then organize treatment. Now, pertaining to the particular topic for tonight, we want to know that emotions and physical health are intimately connected. Again, this is a holistic synthetic model, so that physical ailments can cause emotional disharmonies, and emotional disharmonies can cause physical ailments. It's a cause-effect, cause-effect. Okay, it's not, we don't have emotional problems just from the neck up in the head, that the manifestation is going to be within the body. It's going to have a physical base also. And this can be both the cause of the emotional upset and the result of it. Emotional imbalances are both symptoms and causes for physical issues. Mental health conditions are linked to specific physical ailments of key organs and the organ system relationships. Now, this is what we're going to be working with tonight or exploring together. This is the theory of the 5 elements or the 5 phases. And this is describing the dynamic interplay of all the main systems of the body. Okay. What we did last week, we dealt with lung and kidney, with metal and water. Tonight, we're going to look at wood, fire, and earth. We're going to cover liver, heart, and spleen energetics. So if you look at these charts, let's just start with liver at the top, because that's where we're going to go. We see that the liver is the yin organ, the more important, deeper organ of the body, and it's paired with the gallbladder, and it's the element of wood. The sensory orifice is the eye. The associated structure in the body is the tendons. The emotion of imbalance is going to be anger usually. The season that it's most dominant is the spring. The external, what we call pathogenic influence, is going to be the wind. Shouting is going to be the sound. This chart calls it just calling, but it's actually shouting. It's going to be excess in the voice, which is not necessarily appropriate to the moment. The color green, I wore greenish to honor the liver, where we're going to start tonight. The taste, which affects the liver most directly, is sour. The direction is to the east, and the Chinese clock, which I'll discuss a little bit further and show you a slide, is between 11 at night and 3 in the morning. Okay, that's going to be liver and gallbladder. 11 to 1 is going to be 1 to 3. I mean, is going to be for the liver. Now, before we leave this slide, I'd like to emphasize 2 main things. When we see from kidney to liver, we see an arrow. This is considered the mother-son energetics, where the kidney, the water feeds the wood. We can see that in nature. That's where a lot of this derives from. So water feeds the wood, and then wood feeds the fire, and we go around the 5 elements. That's the production cycle. Now, there's also a control cycle, and this is very important because always nourishing creates excess. So we have to have balance. That's a crucial component of this whole system of knowledge and medicine. And the balance derives from the control cycle, which we see the arrows to the inside. So you have metal, you see lungs. When I say control, it's like an influence. It's a moderation. It's not a dominance. Sometimes it becomes a dominance, and that's when we have disharmony in that particular axis. So this is the control cycle. And this nourishment and control, this back and forth energy, is essential for creating balance. This is another way of looking at the same information, but in a chart, a linear chart. Some of us learn from a linear point of view more than a dynamic circular point of view, just learning style. So I included this. One thing I want you to know is this is recorded. Everybody who's attending tonight or who's even signed up will get a link to get a recording of this. So you don't feel like you have to take any notes in particular. Okay, so this is another way of looking at that same information. I alluded to the Chinese clock. This is important as a way of ascertaining what might be an underlying pattern for a person. During the day, every of the main 12 organs has a 2-hour period where it has maximal energy, and then 12-hour opposite, it has minimal energy. So if we're talking about the liver, which is our first topic tonight, we see that from 1 to 3 a.m. is going to be for the liver. Now, why is this important? As a clue from a diagnostic point of view, is sometimes many people between 1 and 3 in the morning is when they come out of sleep. They might be agitated, they might be throwing off the covers, they might just be just sweating, a variety of things that could be happening. So if every night you get up between 1 and 3, it doesn't mean there's anything physiologically wrong with your liver. You don't have to get blood taken or a picture taken of your liver, anything like that. Because if it's chronic and persistent, you might want to. But it's a clue, okay? It's simply a clue. We know physiologically from a Western point of view too, that between 1 and 3, or certainly as we sleep, is when the liver is having its most dynamic physiologic activity of cleansing the blood in the body. And so if the liver is already very active doing its designated work, and the liver is, its energy is stagnant, or the blood stagnation in the liver also, it might become overheated and it draws us out of sleep. So that's how we use this. We don't base a diagnosis on this, but this is a confirmation that can help us understand more deeply what might be happening. So often when we think about emotions and we talk about Chinese, East Asian medicine in this regard, we focus on negative emotions. But I want you to know that the positive emotions are always part of this system of our work with clients and our understanding of humanity. So with the liver, for instance, love is going to be the positive emotion. We're not going to be angry all the time. And the opposite of grief is going to be hope. Kidneys, we're going to go from fear to courage. From the heart, we're going to have a type of anxiety or lack of joy, and then the positive emotion is joy. Excessive worry relates to the spleen, stomach, the earth element, and the opposite of that, or positive emotion of that, is going to be trust. And looking at the brain, which we include here because of our Western audience, decision making. We're going to make poor decisions. We're going to be focused on the wrong thing, or we're going to make correct or positive decisions, right decisions. Now, just very briefly, historically, the information that we build upon in East Asian medicine has a historic moment where the accumulated knowledge of the indigenous peoples of the Chinese country came together. Scribes were sent out actually to the indigenous people or tribes to gather the information of what the local people were doing for healing. China is a very diverse country, huge and very diverse. And so the emperor at the time actually sent scribes out into the hinterlands to gather this information and then brought it back. And the Yellow Emperor's Classic is a dialogue between the Chibo, the chief correspondent to the emperor, and the emperor. And this dates from 236 BC. And there's a continual history in written form from 236 BC that contains the compendium of knowledge, the vast compendium of knowledge of what we know as Chinese or East Asian medicine. And this, what we have is a continuous study, practice, and development of this medicine. So when we talk about empiricism, the gaining of knowledge by trial and error and observation, we're looking at over 2,000 years of gathering of this knowledge. And I think it'd be naive of us and maybe culturally insensitive to think that wrong ideas or things that didn't work would be retained century after century, era after era. The things that were retained were the things that were positively understood to have efficacy, or if they were toxic and discarded. Okay, and we still study this in the schools of Chinese medicine. It's still studied. Now, you've probably been hearing me make a distinction or use almost interchangeably acupuncture and Chinese medicine. I'd like to take a moment just to say that acupuncture is a technique of a complete system of medicine. Okay. Now, here in the United States and much of the Western world, practitioners such as myself gain state or national licenses as licensed acupuncturists, which I'm very grateful and proud to have this license. But it's also just identifying me as a practitioner of a technique rather than a complete system of medicine. It'd almost be like calling a surgeon a scalpel wielder, a dentist a tooth driller. It's describing a technique. So the completeness of Chinese or East Asian medicine is going to be acupuncture, which is actually not even a standalone technique. It's called acumoxibustion therapy, which is a thermal or warming technique. There's a tremendously rich history of herbal medicine. Nutrition is deeply embedded into this medicine. It's not just something that's cast aside and is not of highest of importance. Body therapy, the Tuina of China, or we see shiatsu in Japan, and Nawad Boran, traditional Thai massage in Thailand. This is a very important part of the medicine. And even in our licensing, the language of the license here in California, practitioners of this medicine are allowed to teach meditation and Tai Chi and Qigong, movement techniques related to meditation and breathing exercise. It actually says in our law, we're allowed to teach breathing exercises. Okay. The one thing I'm going to introduce and we're going to practice together is the 6 healing sounds. And this first concept was written in between 420 and 589 AD. So this is quite an old tradition. It's not as old as the Yellow Emperors, but it's quite an old tradition. It's had a historical development through the centuries. And we're going to be practicing this tonight. Originally, the 6 healing sounds was just a vocalization of sounds which vibrated, and that sound vibration had efficacy on the organs and brought the organs back into balance. Later on, between 1368 and 1644, movement or Qigong was added to this breathing exercises, and this enhanced the efficacy of both. And what we know now in modern research is the more activities or more of our senses, whether it's kinesthetic, auditory, visual, olfactory, taste, the more of our senses that we involve in an activity, the more dynamic it is to bring benefit to us. And this is what we see with the 6 healing sounds. Okay. So we're going to start with wood, the liver. So what I'd like you to invite you to do as I share these few thoughts, and I'll show you this exercise, is let's put our hands, it's under the right breast area, and send some love to your liver. Our livers work really hard for us. So we're going to send some love to the liver. Now, each of the 5 main elements is assigned a tone or a key. The liver, the tone of E. The key of E is the vibrational energy of sound, which is beneficial for harmonizing and stimulating the liver energy. And as we do this short exercise, we're going to consider to breathe in kindness, generosity, forgiveness, self-expansion, and identity. And we're going to breathe out anger, aggression, and depression. We can affirm that you are kind, you are benevolent, and you are authentic. So we're just going to send some love to our liver. Now, what we're going to do, we could do seated, or if you want to stand, you can stand. Follow your breath in and out. Good. Let's open the eyes. Follow me or follow along or just listen. What we're going to do is we're going to bring our arms up. Give me a step back. We're going to bring our arms up and we're going to interlock the fingers. We're going to rotate the palms so they're out. And we're going to side lateral stretch to the left. And this opens up this whole area where the anatomical liver actually lies. We do all that with an inhale. And as we come back to vertical, with our exhale, we make this healing sound. And we float our arms down. We'll do that once again together. Breath in, coming up. Interlock, rotate, and stretch out, side lateral stretch. And as we exhale, good. So the liver influences our ability to see the big picture in life. It helps us have a sense of direction in life, and it influences our creativity, our vision, both physical vision, because the orifice is the eyes, and our inspiration. People with good, strong livers are good decision makers and great planners. They have clear vision and goals. And even in situations when anger is an appropriate emotion, we're able to moderate the anger and moderate the frustration and be able to steer the energy in more positive ways. And this is one reason we want to have an open and fluid energy of our livers so we don't get stuck. Now, when the liver becomes excessive and stagnant, which is sadly very common, we have the potential for rage, fury, and anger, and depression. And one of the things we learn in the Chinese medical model, East Asian medical model, is that unexpressed anger can turn into depression. what happens here often is we have anger and we use so much of our vital force to contain the anger because it doesn't seem appropriate to express anger for whatever reasons. And as we're using all of our vital force that we can be used for creativity to hold in our anger, the sense of depression becomes pervasive. Now, physiologically, we say the liver controls the smooth and even flow of the blood and chi of our entire being. It has a regulatory effect on all the emotions that are correlated to the other main elements of the body. It promotes digestion and absorption, opens into the eyes, and helps with clarity of vision, both metaphorically and practically. Now, a very important point I want to teach you about the liver is the point liver 3. It's actually, I'll show a diagram in a minute. It's on our foot. It has the name of great surge or great rushing. This is a very important point on this channel because of a wide range of actions and indications. It's considered one of the 4 gates points that we use clinically. It's used in many, many treatments. Okay. Physical things it's used for is very calming. It helps with irritability and insomnia. It's very important for headaches, especially there's an internal pathway of the liver which comes to the crown, the apex of the head here, or the crown chakra area from the Indian point of view. And this is why we use liver 3. It actually helps pull that energy down from the head. It's very, very valuable for that. It's good for nausea and vomiting, both constipation and diarrhea, which are both disharmonies of the large intestine. And it's a very valuable point for women's issues of dysmenorrhea, loss of period, which is amenorrhea, PMS, and breast tenderness. Here's where it's located. If you come off the ridge of your foot between the big toe and the second toe, and you slide into a little depression there and give a little pressure, you're going to feel liver 3. Now, if it's tender pretty much on everybody. So don't be overly concerned, but it's going to be tender, and moderate pressure here, or just even gently holding it. And with breathing, you can change the physiology and the energetics of the liver channel, and you can affect a wide range of issues. Now, notice I'm not using the word cure, but we're working to bring the body-mind back into harmony. A second point I'd like to share with you on the liver is the point liver 14, which is really a point about hope. It's a point for positivity, possibility, and perspective. This point is going to be located on both liver 3s. We have bilateral points. It's on the left and the right side. Like with liver 14, it's going to be in the intercostal between the ribs here, the 6th rib here, right below the breast area. And this is a point that's strongly used for depression and distension and pain, hiccups and reflux. And on the level of spirit or spirituality, when you're feeling utterly hopeless, frustrated, or stuck in cynicism and negativity, we want to open this gate of hope. Here we see the location of it. It's in the 6th intercostal space, directly below the nipple. This is a point that's very, very good to work with acupressure, but also cupping. Cupping is I didn't even mention it's a very important historic treatment we use in East Asian medicine. It's become one of the hottest things in the Western world now. We see cupping on Olympic athletes. This last week, the famous actor The Rock was posting pictures of getting cupping for the first time. Cupping has definitely become mainstream. And this, in fact, the whole liver area is very amenable to cupping because it helps break up blood stagnation, blood and energy stagnation. So that's liver 14. I mentioned how important diet and food are. These are some foods that we say can benefit the liver. Again, these are no curative things, but these are things that tend towards benefit. I think it's an important thing to understand. In fact, the word cure is somewhat misused, I believe, in the West, because we think if we remove an organ, we've cured it. That's not really so. And we see commercials that say, take Tylenol, it'll cure your headache. But if the headache comes back tomorrow, what have we've cured? We've alleviated the symptom, but we haven't attacked the cause or even affected the cause we've created a temporary change. So these are foods that are going to be of benefit, such as grapefruit. A lot of people recommend lemon juice and warm water first thing in the morning. It's invigorating, helps things move. Always remember to rinse your mouth after drinking lemon juice to protect the enamel of your teeth. Blueberries and cranberries and grapes, the prickly pear of cactus, beets or steamed beets, roasted beets, beet juice are well known for blood tonics and affecting the liver. The cabbage family, the cruciferous vegetables, cabbage, arugula, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, these are all very good. True nuts, green tea, olive oil, and the fatty fish that have the omegas are going to be very, very helpful. Thinking in terms of herbal remedies, I want to share a very important herbal remedy, which is Xiaoyao Wan. It translates as free and easy wanderer. This is a formula that's been used for centuries. It helps remove, works by clearing liver stagnation. And these are the ingredients in them. I've put the Latin and the Chinese. This is a very common formula. It's used for a variety of things. It's used for menstrual issues, emotional issues, digestive issues. It's one of the great formulas that we use in clinic. I'm not recommending you prescribe these for yourself. I'm not prescribing for you. We're not treating disease or illness here. Just giving you a knowledge to work with, or if you see a practitioner, you'll have a greater understanding. Okay, moving on. Disjunction, I would answer any questions you might have. On the chat box, you can share questions and we'll have time at the end to look at these. So wood feeds fire. There's actually 4 main energies associated with the fire. The heart is the primary one and the small intestine is secondary. Something called the pericardium, the heart protector. And at the end, I'll introduce you to the concept of the triple warmer, which is also part of the fire element. So as I read through here, share with you, let's bring our hands over our heart. It's on our left upper chest area. Send love to our heart. Boy, does our heart work hard for us too, beating constantly, thousands and thousands and thousands of times. Never stops, even when we sleep. The healing sound is going to be ha. It's in the key of G. We want to breathe in love and joy, happiness, honor, sincerity, creativity, and enthusiasm, and let go of impatience, arrogance, hastiness, cruelty, and violence. We want to affirm that you are appropriate, you are responsible, and you are loving. Whoop. I've skipped around. So here, let me show you that exercise and we'll go. Okay, here we go. Okay. So we're actually going to do the mirror image of what we did for wood. We're going to breathe in, coming up. We're going to interlock and rotate. And this time we're going to lean to the side lateral stretch to the right, opening up the area of the heart. And then as we exhale, we're going to come forward and we float our hands down, going, ah. Okay, one more time, breathing in. Interlock, rotate, side lateral stretch to the right, and coming up, exhaling. Great. So we learn that the heart regulates blood circulation and blood vessels. It's responsible for even and regular pulse and nourishing of the arteries. It influences our vitality and our spirit. The sensory orifice of the tongue is the tongue that relates to the heart. And the health of our complexion is a reflection of how healthy our heart and how fluid and vital the blood of the body is. we say in TCM or Chinese medicine, East Asian medicine, the heart has a close relationship with the brain and mental consciousness and memory. Something called Shen in the medicine, which is spirit. So the heart, because of the tongue, governs speech. And also when the heart is full and robust with blood and energy, it helps with our sleep. So when we have dysfunction, we have mental restlessness, poor memory, lack of joy, depression, anxiety is listed here, but I think lack of joy is a better way to look at it. And people that have a heart type, the depression or lack of joy, they may speak slowly or have trouble speaking from the heart. And I mentioned insomnia again. One telltale sign we see about a blood and heart dysfunction is what's called inappropriate laughter. When in a dialogue with a friend or a client, in my instance, when they talk about things like, they'll say, my parents really never loved me. That's inappropriate laughter. And that's a sign of injury to the heart. When the heart's out of balance, we see lack of enthusiasm, lack of vitality. The mind jump, monkey mind all the time, despair, and again, this lack of sleep. Okay. Long-term memory issues. Sometimes excessive dreaming is related to excess in the heart energy or stagnation. Here's some foods that are good for the heart. The leafy greens are very good. Kale and collards and spinach. They're good, especially steamed more than sauteed, and even if unless they're immature, they shouldn't really be eaten raw. Whole grains, the fatty fish with the omega-3s, walnuts and almonds, the chia seeds and flax seeds and hemp seeds. Olive oil appears in a lot of places being beneficial. The berries are good for the heart. The avocados, garlic, beans, well cooked, dark chocolate. And green tea. These are all foods that are good for the heart in moderation. Everything in moderation. A very important point I want to share with you is the point heart 7, which actually has this word Shen. Its name means spirit gate. We'll see a closer diagram visually, but it's here on the wrist on the little finger side. And interestingly, there's actually a Shen Men point in the ear, which has been shown in research to increase endorphin release in the brain. And we see that this point nourishes the heart, calms the emotions, relieves anxiety, soothes worries of a troubled mind. It's a very important point for sleep, for helping with sleep. It helps support mental clarity. And if speaking publicly is a concern, one thing to do actually is just hold heart 7 as you speak or as you're getting ready to speak. I have done this over the years. Here we see the location. Again, it's on the little finger side in this little depression right at the wrist crease. It's on both sides. Very valuable point that we use in treatment. One of the things we can do as practitioners, sometimes we put magnets on these points, or we put little seeds that can be used for stimulation. We have a lot of techniques that we can use in the modern practice of this medicine. A really nice formula for nourishing the heart is a formula called Gupitan. Quebewan is another name for it. And the longanberry, which is actually just a fruit that can be used as the dried fruits, very delicious, is an important herb in this. And this formula nourishes the heart. It helps strengthen the chi, it tonifies blood, and it also works to help the earth element, which we're going to see is the next element. And so we strengthen the heart, and some of that energy helps with the spleen or earth energy. Here's the ingredients. You'll see that rarely do we use single herbs in Chinese herbal medicine. It's usually therapeutic synergistic combinations, and each of the herbs has different roles in the formula, energetically, flavor-wise, and harmony within the whole formula. It's a very, very complex and beautiful system of medicine. Okay, moving along. We're down to earth. We're going to get down to earth, actually. So we say in earth, it's the spleen and the pancreas and the stomach. As I'm speaking, I'd like you to bring your actually physical spleen is here on the mid-axillary line. So we can put our hands towards the stomach area, which is here on the left side in the spleen. We're going to send some loving down to the spleen and earth element. It's in the key of C. The emotions so associated, we're going to breathe in fairness, openness, compassion, centering and balance. And we're going to let go of, with our breath out, we're going to let go of worry, anxiety, and pity. We're going to affirm that you are sincere, you are faithful, and you are loyal. The sound we're going to make is a guttural sound of, we want to create a vibration like in our epiglottis here. I'm not a very good bullfrog, but it's sort of like a bullfrog sound. The action of the Qigong is very simple, which is going to be almost like a acupressure technique on our cells. We're going to bring in our palm, this is on our left side, we're going to use our fingertips and compress into this area with our inhale. And as we exhale, we relax our hands and we make the healing sound. And again, compressing in, you can bring your tummy in, compressing, inhale, and exhale. That's our Qigong for Earth. The spleen is a broader concept than this giant lymph gland that we have anatomically. We say that the main thing that the spleen's doing, it's for the transformation of food and fluids into blood and energy. It's what we call the source of all postnatal chi and blood in the body, which is absolutely vital for health and continuance of life. It also has an important function with fluids in the body. And it's when the spleen is healthy, there's going to be abundant of nutritive essence for the chi and blood. You can see how the stomach, which is its paired yang organ, plays into this. Emotionally, we're going to see people that have balance in the earth are going to be compassionate and nurturing people. They're going to be great mediators, peacemakers, and people with strong earth are going to be the most loyal friends you're going to ever have. The spleen helps us to concentrate, memorize, study, and apply critical thinking skills. This is really important. There's in fact, some of the formulas we see are actually formulas to help students study and to be strong in their heads for school and to memorize and concentrate, besides all the digestive issues. And often digestive issues are things which make studying and memorizing and critical thinking more difficult. When the spleen's out of balance, there's going to be loss of appetite and poor digestion. Because we don't have adequate blood and chi, there's going to be fatigue and tiredness. Oftentimes it's distension and gas related to weakness in the earth element, loose stools. Phlegm accumulation is a sign of weakness of the spleen. It can be either coughing or sinus with mucus. The spleen rules the muscles of the body, so there are going to be weak muscles. The spleen, the mouth is the orifice related to the spleen. If the lips are pale and the tongue is pale, that's a sign of the blood deficiency. That means the spleen's not creating enough blood because it's not drawing nutrients from foods. An important clinical sign is a tendency to bruising or spontaneous bruising. This is a sign of spleen deficiency or earth deficiency. And this is one of those things unless it's a severe problem, which might be indicative of blood cancers, which can come back to earth element. But it's a sign, it can be an early sign of if you just bump yourself lightly and you get a big bruise, that's going to be a sign of spleen deficiency. And that's a question we ask very commonly in our intakes, which is probably not asked very much by your physicians. And bleeding disorders, including excessive menstrual bleeding, are a sign of weakness of the spleen. We can definitely nourish our spleen with our diets, with all the organs, but the spleen especially, because it's the engine, the furnace that's going to be transforming and transporting through the body. Soups. I can't emphasize how important soups are to this type of health. In fact, we say in physiology that our spleen turns everything into a soup so we can assimilate it. So if it starts as a soup rather than as something raw, it's going to be more easily digested. And if your spleen yang, or the furnace of your spleen, is diminished, our ability to transform raw foods is going to be diminished also. Corn and rice and millet are really good grains associated with spleen health. Carrots and carrot juice, certainly cooked carrots also. Chickpeas, which you're going to get in hummus, are very good for the earth element. The squashes, especially the yellow squashes, are really, really valuable for nourishing the spleen. The Asian pears are really nice and crunchy. Cucumbers, Jerusalem artichokes, potatoes, and sweet potatoes. These are all good foods to support the spleen. And really, these all are more, when you have them more cooked, they're going to be more beneficial. A marvelous herb formula is the Buzhuang Yikitang, which is central qi tea. This formula dates, it's been written up since 1249 AD. So again, empirically, this formula has been used over and over, and it's used every day in clinics of Chinese and East Asian medicine, and to this very day, this formula. It actually is very, very nourishing for the earth element. And it has ginseng and atractylodes and astragalus. Some of these are common knowledge now even. Dong Quai, Angelica sinensis, jujubes, which is it's a dried fruit, citrus peel, and bupleurum licorice. These are all, and ginger. And I didn't even mention ginger as a food, but this is really, it's part of this formula. Again, this is a very, very classic formula. And this can be used quite regularly, and you don't really have to have a lot of symptoms to gain benefit from this. It's not too hot, so if you run hot, it's not going to make you too hot. Some points to help with the spleen energy. Number 3, spleen 3, are known as supreme white. I'll show you in a minute where it is. It's on your foot. Really good point for epigastric pain and abdominal pain, digestive issues. And one of the main things I see myself using it for clinically is to reduce sugar cravings. And one of the crucial emotional component of spleen disharmony, it's not really a classic emotional problem people have, it's just too much worry. And eating too much sugar increases worry. Supreme white, especially with moxibustion and often like a Buzhuang Yikitang herb formula, can actually help diminish sugar cravings. This is very important to reduce sugar cravings in times of type 2 diabetes and metabolic disorders, more or less getting out of control. Here we see it, it's on the inside of the foot. If you look at feel down by your big toe, if you come off your big toe towards your heel, you're going to fall into depression. And that's spleen 3. And we say of source point, you can see written there. Source points are the way we energetically get energy most directly deep into the organ. It's the functionality of the organ itself. It's not so much for the meridian, the pathway, but into the organ itself. Spleen 3. And here's one of the wonderful, great points of Chinese East Asian medicine, spleen 6, the 3 yin crossing. So all 3 of the yin come through spleen 6. It's the yin of the leg, the liver, the kidneys, and the spleen. So with this one point, we're able to affect the energetics of these 3 essential, highly important energies of the body, spleen 6. And what you see is if we put our hands just above the ankle, where your 4th finger will rest just behind the tibia bone on the inside of the leg, is where spleen 6 is. And if you press there, you're probably going to feel a certain amount of tenderness. It's going to be tender on almost everybody. And this is a point that's used very commonly. It can be used symptomatically to relieve menstrual cramps, for instance, or in PMS. It's good for digestive disorders, urinary function. It's a very, very valuable point. And it's very, very often used with the warming technique of moxibustion too. So spleen 6, it's for digestive, gynecological, urinary, emotional, and sleep disorders. So it's very, very dynamic point. So you've probably heard, we've talked about 5 elements, but from the start I've said there's 6 healing sounds. And the 6th healing sound relates to something very unique to East Asian medicine, which is known as the triple warmer or the sanjiao, or 3 heaters, it's also called. And this is an integrative energy. The triple warmer is very, very important in immunity. And it's functional. It doesn't have any, there's no structure of triple warm in the body. It actually has a lot to do with fluids in the body and the integration of fluids and its different states throughout the body. And it's going to bring in the lymph system and immunity. And it's used integratively. It helps pull all the energies together. If we think about that 5-element chart, oftentimes the triple warmer is put in the middle because everything is running through the triple warmer. Okay. And so to finish the talk part of our gathering tonight before we answer questions, I want to do this to help us integrate our energies. Again, you could be standing or seated. I'll stand so you can get a little clearer view of what I'm going to do. I'll chop off my head there, looks like. So we're going to just breathe a little bit with our hands in front of our, just below our navels, palms up. And just think about all the dynamic things that are happening in your body simultaneously as you're just being here. All the, what we call neurovegetative states that are functioning to keep us happy, keep us alive, keep us vital. All these things. If you just had dinner, you're digesting. Thoughts, your heart, your liver, everything is happening without us having a single thing to do with it unless we seek to gain that understanding and ability. Because we can develop a conscious effect on the unconscious functions of our body. So the healing sound is he. It's in the key of G. We're going to breathe in balance, integrity, harmony, calmness, and fluidity. We're going to breathe out sluggishness, congestion, and stagnation. We're going to affirm that you are appropriate, you are fluid, and you are harmonious. This is going to look a little bit more like standard Qigong, some of you might have seen. As we inhale, we're going to breathe in, coming up, palms up. When we reach just above the heart area, we're going to rotate and we're going to press down, letting out the sound. Take a moment. Breath in. Rotate. And let the breath out, going. Take a moment now with our palms over each other, above the navel, over the navel. Let your breath pour into your belly and feel the tummy push into the palms. Feel yourself as whole and vital. The energy of your body supporting each other, balancing and harmonizing. Bringing creativity to your spirit, peace in your heart, and the desire and the will to get up each day and contribute to our community and our society and to our evolution. Okay. So thank you so much for joining myself and CIHS tonight. It's been a pleasure to be here. I want to thank Chiara because she does such a great job. She herself is actually a published author and a teacher. and an animal communicator. She's got a lot to offer. Everybody will receive a link to this lecture to open if they want or share. If you want to reach me directly, there's an email for me. And the 6 healing sounds I would like to mention, and the affirmations and the sounding. One of the things I've been doing in the last decade is working in executive producing healing music. Along with someone will be presenting with the Lifelong Learning Center later this month, Yuval Ron. We have a production company called Meta Mindfulness Music. I invite you to visit our website. Our music is streaming on Spotify and Pandora and Apple Music and Amazon, yada, yada, yada. But I'm very, very thrilled that I have this opportunity to work in healing music and being able to spread this vital information in a much broader circles, because we've seen our music is being listened to all over the world, which is incredibly satisfying and wonderful. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them. And if not, thank you also very much for attending. What do we got?
Thanks, Rick. I appreciate it so much. Thank you for your kind words too. We do have 3 questions for you. So the first one is regarding acupuncture. Would you say that there are overlaps and differences between acupuncture session and an infrared sauna session?
In which session?
An infrared sauna session and acupuncture session. Are there overlaps and differences between
they can be depending on how the infrared is being applied, they can be done simultaneously. Absolutely. Now the infrared is going to be quite tonifying and warming. And so if a person runs very, very hot, it might not be indicated. And there might be some areas of the body or points that we want to be careful, but they definitely can be integrated together very well. It's a modern application of a thermal technique. So it's especially for warming the spleen and warming the kidneys, warming the whole
I was
abdomen.
going to say spleen and kidneys would probably really respond well to that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You can, if it's a very specific infrared where it's directed, like the point spleen 3 I mentioned can be used, but rarely we wouldn't want to do it directly on a liver 3 because livers tend to be hot already.
Interesting.
Create a headache.
I have some infrared lasers actually that I use on animals, and you know, they will stand for it or they'll walk away, especially my horse, because they're large animals. So you can find the acupoints and use those, and it's been very interesting. I have to say, it's been super interesting. Next question. Wouldn't oils or fatty fish cause the liver to work extra hard? Why are these beneficial foods to this particular organ?
Well, the liver emulsifies long-chain fatty acids, and if the quality of the fatty acids are good, they're going to be nourishing. The problem with oils and fats that we've encountered are the hard oils, mainly the synthetic oils, or oils that are heated too much, because then they start to become a little bit rancid. So a healthy fat and healthy oils are absolutely vital to our bodies. And they're good for a variety of reasons. Now, again, if you eat too much fatty fish, or if you find yourself burping or tasting yellowtail twice, it might be too fatty. But I think a lot of the negative things about fats are leading us into the wrong direction. Because especially processed foods, what they've done is they've added carbohydrates. So they'll say something's low fat and they've added carbohydrates. And when the carbohydrates get stored in the body as fats, so you're much better off having high quality fatty foods and then limiting your carbs, and it's going to be a much more balanced approach.
That makes sense.
And
It
even
puts
things
less
like
pressure.
nuts, like
Sorry.
if you open a bag of nuts and it has a rancid smell, throw them away or take them back.
Yes,
because oils are very
absolutely.
volatile, fats are very volatile, and rancidity is a big problem.
It is a big problem, and especially in things like fish oil, for example, that's been bottled. You know, I won't touch it because I know that 9 times out of 10, it might be contaminated or it's rancid. So that's a really, really good point. Thank you for that question. We have another question. Couldn't an infection like Lyme or any other ones that wouldn't affect the spleen it could often result in a host of possible brain challenges. For example, not having fit memory and other faculties that the spleen governs.
Huh, that's interesting. Now, Lyme's is a pretty profound and somewhat mysterious disease. One thing to know is the brain, it used to be considered in Western physiology that the brain, there was a blood-brain barrier, and the brain was really separate from what else was happening in the body. We know now through discovery of something that's been identified or called glymphatics, is that there's an active circulation of lymph through the brain. I'm trying to bridge Eastern
Interesting.
theories here because the lymph has a lot to do with the spleen in this model. Again, the spleen is actually a giant lymph gland. So glymphatics is this dynamic lymph movement that was only recently been recognized, where especially at sleep, when we sleep, the physical structure of our brain changes and conduits actually open up. And this is the way that the brain cleanses, because this is when toxins are able to be removed from the brain and taken back out of the body, not out of the brain and then into the system where detoxification can occur. This is one of the important reasons why sleep is so important, because if we don't get good sleep, we're not going to be cleansing our brains. And they really think that the lack of lymphatic flow in the brain is a contributor to dementia. So the sort of off the side of the question, exactly, so it's like with Lyme's, it seems like it can affect multiple systems. I think we all have an inherent weakness somewhere in our system that's usually inherited genetically. And something like Lyme's will tend to attack a weak link. And if lymphatic flow or cognitive function is a place where there's a weak link, some people it's going to be the muscle, which is a sign of spleen disharmony. If the liver gets very involved, which it usually will because it's trying to clear toxins, you're going to have more of the headache symptomatology you see with Lyme's. Do know that I have, not so much myself, but colleagues in my group practice have had dynamic success treating Lyme's. It's not a lifetime sentence. You can recover from it, but you have to do a variety of things. And it's the use of antibiotics for months. I'm not sure if that's as helpful as it seems, but that seems to be the primary thing in the arsenal of Western medicine. But it's a big challenge. It really is.
I'm thinking, Rick, when we're talking about Lyme or any other type of pathology, because that's how it's being classified traditionally, I wonder what emotions are keeping that kind of infection in place. I always ask myself that question. Are there emotions that would contribute to, because they contribute to the weakness of the organ, does it contribute to potential infections? And I think
Absolutely.
that's
Again, because it's a dynamic interplay. So again,
right.
With Lyme's, there's tremendous anxiety and worry.
Yes.
And then sometimes there's frustration and anger. So you see, depending on which emotion is most manifest with an individual, if it's worry, we're going to think more earth element. If it's anger, frustration, we're going to think more liver. If there's tremendous anxiety, we're going to think more in terms of water and kidneys.
Just the kidneys and fear,
So
right?
again, a lot of it, like Lyme's, is not one thing where it's always the symptomatology is the same for everybody.
Yes,
But
yes.
but what you're pointing out, Kiara, is very interesting because the emotional expression in reaction to the disease can be a clue of where the weakness is and where we can direct treatment more for that individual. Because a lot of this is individualized medicine. There's not cookie cutter that everybody that has, for instance, everybody that has headaches shouldn't be treated the same from East Asian medical point of view. In fact, we differentiate headaches. So for instance, headaches on the top of the head are going to be more the wood element.
Yes.
The forehead's going to be more earth. A headache that runs like this is going to be a gallbladder.
Yes.
A head that's empty is going to be a vacuity. It's going to maybe be more kidneys. And if the head feels like it's filled with slush, it's going to be more spleen. So these are all the metaphors we use to describe our affliction or further clues to help unlock the diagnostic pattern.
You know, I love what you say when you say the metaphors that we use, because from my understanding, and please correct me, I have an introductory understanding about traditional Chinese medicine, but you know, the metaphor is very important. And in fact, if we look at humans, we find meaning in stories. We create stories to find meaning in relation to events that happen to us, whether it's something that's joyful or not. We try and put things into place that way. And I think that's a really key point of traditional Chinese medicine. And it's wanting in the traditional conventional approach. And that's why I gravitate towards it. And I like to read about it, because it does resonate, and it takes us as a whole person and how we are and how we function in the world.
Yeah. Within the context of the brilliance of Western medicine, which is undeniable.
Of course, I
And
totally agree with
I'm
you.
not promoting, getting rid, at all. I
Not
think,
at all. No.
I know, but one of the things I see clinically happening is there's hardly any storytelling. There's hardly any time made for history. We do a little physical often, but there's not time to really take history. And don't get me started on the lack of physical contact, even before the pandemic.
Yes.
The doctor that sits behind the desk is gathering information and can use every algorithm that genius intelligence has brought to the fore. But the personal encounter, in fact, a lot of the research that's being done on what's called placebo effect and the efficacy of known placebos now relates back to the relationship and the ritual of healing.
Absolutely.
And the ritual healing has a lot to do with the exchange of energy, and not a hierarchy either, that there's a connection that's formed. And I found over the years that's one of the beauties of practicing this medicine, is the connectivity that we're able to achieve, the possibility.
Yeah.
And it's the expectation of this medicine. We're not
Of
just
course.
white coats with stethoscopes.
And you know, that's interesting, because when I do acupressure on animals, that's exactly right. And I don't just use the theory, I actually go and smell the coat of the animal. I touch the coat of the animal, because the smell is going to tell me. I could tell that an animal had antibiotics, and that the owner said, "How did you know?" I said, "I can smell it. I could smell it through the coat." And the coat was brittle, and I knew that was kidney related, water related. So we needed to look at that perhaps. So I really like the idea of using these different faculties that are part of being human and part of the body, actually, and gathering information that way, in such a way that we're creating a picture. Especially for animals, it's hard to do, because they don't speak English the way we, they don't have a language the way we have. So, but that's
something I
interesting.
didn't mention. In the 5-element patterns, each of the main energies does have an odor also.
Yes.
And they're strict 5-element practitioners use the smell. In fact, they say that a person's scent will change before any other physical manifestations occur.
Absolutely agree with that. Sometimes, when somebody passes you, you can smell them right away. It's like, oh, and I always try and relate it back to, I wonder what organ that is, to try and practice my learning. So it's very, very interesting. And we had last week a little bit about the 5-element practitioners, which is fabulous. But I have one last question. So here we go. So can acupuncture done from a young age over decades help prevent dementia at older age if we optimize lymphatic system?
Anecdotally, I would say absolutely. I don't have any studies. There's no long-term study that's shown that. We do see things like Tai Chi studies being done with elderly, where it increases balance, it increases mood, and increases mental function. We do have anecdotal, and there is some controlled studies that have shown that. And I mentioned Tai Chi because it's really just a way of moving, it's a way of moving energy through the body. It's like a self-acupressure treatment. So it's something that someone's going to have to do a long-term study of in order to establish sort of a scientific, definitive notion about that. But part of longevity seems to be, sort of physical exercise and good diet, and certainly sleep. One of the big problems getting older is the lack of sleep, or getting up to urinate in the night all the time, and these things that interrupt deep sleep. So there's no downside as far as preventative health of doing these things. It's only, I think it's either going to be upside or going to be somewhat neutral. But I would put my money on the upside going forward.
I would agree. Do you think yoga is similar to Tai Chi in the sense that it moves energy, or is it different?
Well, it's absolutely, yoga is more, so they say, more focused on the endocrine system.
Oh, really? Interesting.
A lot of the things. So absolutely, a very big benefit of yoga compared to a lot of the Qigong and Tai Chi is the inversions. Because
the inversions, why would that be?
Because they facilitate lymphatic movement.
Makes sense.
And one of the big concerns for overall health is stagnation in the lymph system, because the lymph system is simultaneously the sewage system of the body, because it gathers the toxins from metabolic action of each cell, and it's also the place where all the immune function occurs. And so if the system that's working to keep us healthy is polluted all the time, our immune response is going to be diminished. So these inversions we see in yoga are very, very valuable. And
interesting. I'll remember that.
Qigong, they call it like yoga, Chinese yoga and stuff like that.
Oh, really?
They're not the same. You see that, I think more marketing for anything.
I see.
But all these things, I combine yoga and Qigong and Tai Chi every day. No one tells me I can't.
And so, why not? I mean,
why not? I'm gonna do.
And the lymphatics, I think, are really important because they don't have a pump system. So the pump system really is movement, and it's certain types of movement to get it to push through. And I think that's very, very important. I remember in another event that we held together, Rick, you also mentioned that I think it was lime essential oil supports the lymphatics. And I've always remembered that. That stuck with me. I learned so much from you in these events, So
lime essential oil, like if you're feeling a sore throat, behind the ears, this area of the neck, just by the clavicle, is where a lot of lymph dumps back into the heart. This is a place you don't want to use too much lime oil because it can irritate the skin.
Of course, it's a hot oil. Yep. All right. Well, does anybody else have any other questions? We've had some really wonderful feedback, Dr. Gold. We've had information about the animals and intuition, but also especially your information, because it's a nice melange. We're bringing different things together and doing exactly what the vision for CIHS is, expanding minds and bringing mind, body, and spirit together, which I'm super excited about. So thank you for all your comments. And if there are no other questions, I'd like to thank you, Dr. Gold, for being with us here tonight. Thank you, everybody, and all those who are going to listen to the recording for joining us. And I hope that it was helpful to you. Remember, we are a 501c. We're a nonprofit. So if you would like to host an event and sponsor one, please feel free to contact me. If you have any questions, contact me as well. You have my email address via the link from Zoom that you received. So I'd like to thank you all very much for being here tonight. And I hope to see you soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Be healthy. Bye-bye.